Right. If Donald Trump is the Republican nominee in 2024, we must do everything we can to defeat him. So it seems to me that if he wins, that leaves you with three choices. You could either vote for or support Joe Biden, vote for or support a third-party candidate, or run yourself. Am I right? Is that basically the universe of options?
I think that's a good description.
And how do you assess those three right now?
Neither party has selected their nominee yet. It looks like it's most likely to be Donald Trump and Joe Biden, but we don't know that for sure. And I think that it's going to require making an assessment about sort of how we can most effectively mobilize people in both parties and mobilize independents, frankly, to stand against Donald Trump. I think, there's a lot that has to be done to begin to rebuild the Republican Party, potentially to build a new conservative party. But in my view, that has to wait until after the 2024 election, because our focus has got to be on defeating Donald Trump.
But running as a third-party or no-labels candidate is a distinct option for you this time.
I haven't ruled anything out. I really am going to take the next couple of months and look at what is going to be the most effective path to ensure the defeat of Donald Trump.
And you've heard Democrats very forcefully say that no labels. I mean, some even suggest it's a stalking horse for Trump. But regardless, that a third-party candidate simply elects Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're assessing this now, but do you think there's something to that?
Certainly, I'm not going to do something that has the impact of helping Donald Trump.
Right.
I think that we're already in a situation in terms of the election next year where we have a third party, we have independent candidates. So you're going to have a fractured electorate, and I think that again the whole question is, what do we do to defeat the man who is an existential threat to our republic?
And if there is a real fractured electorate, there's a real possibility nobody gets the majority of the electoral votes. It goes to the House, obviously.
Right.
Under its current makeup, that would be the Republicans in the House.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that's just crucially important in this next cycle, which is obviously working to elect candidates who believe in the Constitution. I've expressed very clearly my view that having Mike Johnson as the Speaker, having this Republican majority in charge, you can't count on them to defend the Constitution at this moment.
I want to play an audio clip from you from a conversation I had with Donald Trump just less than 3 months after January 6th, where I asked him if he really wanted to go to the Capitol, as he said in that speech.
I was thinking about going back during the problem to stop the problem, doing it myself. Secret Service didn't like that idea too much.
So
And I could have done that, and you know what? I would have been very well received. Don't forget, the people that went to Washington that day, in my opinion, they went because they thought the election was rigged.
Isn't that right there an admission by Trump himself of his own culpability?
Yes, and it also tells you that he was fully aware that the crowd would follow his instructions, and that had he stood up and told people to leave at any moment, they would have done so, as we know they did when he finally did tell people to leave. I think that, one of the things that's really important throughout all of this is Donald Trump's intent. And we see again and again sort of the premeditation for this whole plan, the premeditation to claim victory, but also the fact that while the violence was underway and the electoral vote was stopped, the armed mob at that point was carrying out his wishes. They were achieving the objective that he had been trying to achieve through multiple plans and purposes all along, and they were following his instructions. You look at hundreds now of the criminal defendants who have said, yeah, I was there because Donald Trump told me to come.
And you yourself have faced all kinds of threats, and others who voted to impeach and others who have stood up for him have faced those threats. You talk about a Republican who wanted to vote for impeachment but was worried not just about his own safety but his family's safety. So there was concern, and there still is concern, about retribution.
What a sad thing it is that we're living in a country today where you have elected officials who are facing the threat of physical violence because of a former president. This isn't sort of the threat of physical violence because of terrorist organizations or outside entities. This is the threat of violence because of a former president of the United States. And I think we have to be very careful as a country that we stop and we think about what that means and the path that we're going down when that is the case.
And in fact, Kevin McCarthy told me himself just 3 days after January 6th that he was worried about this. I'm going to play you a clip from a conversation that I had on January 9th.
And what's real crazy is back in our district, there's tons of people who are ready to storm the Capitol again. I just don't know about these people.
I mean, you've written about McCarthy making a lot of wrong decisions, but in that moment, he sounds like he's genuinely fearful about more violence.
One of the things that was striking to me in writing the book was it was absolutely clear in those days just after the 6th, on the calls that we were having in leadership, Kevin McCarthy was very clear and very strong about the potential for violence against members of the House. You know, he actually understood reality and was being responsible in the beginning, but it didn't take long until the political necessity of appeasing Donald Trump caused him to take a different path.
You've said that if he's the nominee, you're no longer a Republican. That's still the case.
For sure.
Do you see evidence that there's an appetite in the country for a new party?
I think that there's appetite in the country certainly for a return to honor in politics, for a return to honesty. And I think that people sort of lived through what's happened over the last several years, lived through the Trump presidency, and you know, they want to know that their leaders are people that, you know, they could say to their kids, you should be like this person. And that's a feeling that stretches across party lines.
And it is too early, but I'll ask it anyway, to ask a legacy question. I mean, what will people say about you?
I hope that they will say she did the right thing and that she put the country ahead of politics and ahead of partisanship at a moment when it really mattered.
And that project is, in your mind, just getting started?
Certainly. I mean, look, I think, again, once we get through this election cycle and we defeat Donald Trump, I think there's clearly a huge amount of work that has to be done to restore, you know, to right the ship of our democracy.